That is correct. We are back Monday. We have a case of the Mondays. You have a case of the Mondays, but it feels good after a big Broncos win. I don't care if it's preseason or not.
Wait a minute. I don't think there's such a thing as a big preseason win. It's like jumbo shrimp. It's an oxymoron.
Hey, 41-0. If we're going to say big preseason win for something, it's going to be for that one. Welcome in to Orange and Blue today, presented by Sean Ponda, Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason. Yeah, Broncos won. Yeah, Alberto went off. I mean, we knew we needed a big game, Mace, but my God, he was a monster.
He was a monster and delivering every way fashionable. And you know what? The other thing is he was a monster after he'd been a monster in joint practices, after he had a monster game blocking the week before against San Francisco, after he'd stacked good practices, including good blocking work in the week before that. It wasn't like you just turned on Saturday and it's like, whoa, there's Alberto. He's having a big night. No, this is stacking day after day of really good work, which is why, sometimes you look at that preseason finale and a player does well and it's like, well, so what? It's you dismiss it. Who cares? The player gets cut and you move on. I don't think that's the case with Alberto. As I wrote and said on denversports.com, I even put in my video piece post game, Cecil. I think the Broncos would be making a mistake to let go of Alberto, whether it's by a trade or being waived.
Yeah, there's no doubt. He's definitely motivated and he's done it. And this is what's great about players. When training camp started, I was like, no way is he going to make the 53. And in 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks of practice, 2 games in the preseason, like this is what it's all about. Go change the narrative. People didn't think you can block. He's blocking. We already knew he's the receiving weapon. And boy, did he show that in a couple of games.
Yeah, and not only that, but as a weapon, he's fighting for yards too. There's that one-handed catch, of course, he had in the fourth quarter. But I'm thinking also of the 3rd and 21 play where he takes a pass from Ben DiNucci in the flat and just takes off, basically runs through over a defender, gets the yardage necessary to move the chains. I mean, the effort was there. And then on top of everything else, seeing how happy Albert's teammates were for him.
Right.
We saw that when he had that block on Marcus Haynes, when he knocked him to the ground in practice, but they were absolutely ecstatic for him in the locker room after Saturday's game. I mean, clearly dudes want him to succeed. Do you get rid of somebody who's got clear talent, appears to have turned a corner, and seems to have everybody in that room rooting for him? Man, I'd hang on to that guy.
Well, what kind of message does it send to the locker room if you get rid of that guy, right? I don't care what he did before then. What's he doing now? How does he fit now? And Sean Payton, the greatest thing about Sean Payton, we can get into this with Jaleel McLaughlin as well, is like, can you play or can you not play? Sean Payton's going to find you, and if you can play, he's going to play you.
Regardless of where you're drafted, regardless of what the initial plan was. And you know what? That plan can change over the course of camp. Look, when that depth chart came out and Albert O was the number 5 tight end, I know we kept seeing him rotate in with the ones from time to time, but that said something, right? And it probably said something further of what he had to prove, that on a night when Adam Troutman and Greg Dulcich did not get jerseys, Alberto did. It was basically, okay, go show us what you got, kid. And he did, and he did, quite frankly. And yes, I know that was a really bad Rams team out there, because that is a depth-shy roster that has 35 rookies heading into last week of the 90 on the roster. So what's going to happen is, you've with the Rams, you've got some guys on the first team who should be second teamers. You've got some guys on the second team who should be third teamers. There's a little bit of a chain reaction there, which I think helped result in the magnitude of the game Saturday, 41-0, because it's like, hey, some of these guys, they're going to be in Canada next year, or they're going to be in the XFL or the USFL. They don't necessarily have NFL futures. So yeah, you got to take that into account, but all you can do is line up and do well against the people who are in front of you. Right.
Right.
And again, like I said, with Alberto, it wasn't just about this game. It was stacking days. That's the key thing. It didn't happen as a one-off on Saturday. Saturday was actually the culmination of a lot of good work that he's been doing, frankly, since I think his feet got put to the fire when he saw that depth chart was on the number 5 team.
What about, if I may rant for a little bit, Mace, just a little bit? I have Denver
Sure.
sports tonight to rant for an hour tonight, so everyone
Look
stay
out.
tuned for that. I don't want to see Jarrett Stidham needs to start over Russ talk. I don't want fans to say it. Certainly don't want media or analysts to say it.
Oh,
Like, Stidham did not stack days. Stidham was one of the most maddeningly inconsistent players in all of practice for weeks. And he has a great game against the Rams. That's good. He showed his toughness. There's so many good things to take away from Jarrett Stidham, but don't dare anyone say he now needs to play over Russ.
yeah. In fact, this morning when I did my spot on the morning show on 104.3 The Fan, I was asked specifically, I believe by Mike Evans, whether Jarrett Stidham had closed the gap on Russell Wilson. And I'm just like, come on. Okay. Oh, is he giving Sean Payton something to think about? Is there pressure on Russell Wilson? Like, oh, stop it. Okay. Stop it. Like you said, the consistency wasn't there. Look, what he did on Saturday was laudable, and it's a positive sign. Be happy for it. But to talk about a situation where that game means that Jarrett Stidham is somehow closing the gap and breathing down Russell Wilson's neck, give me a break. Be smarter, people. Be smarter than that. Be wiser than that. Anyway,
right.
Yeah. You and I are on the same page on this one, Cecil. I mean,
okay.
I think when I had that question asked of me, I could feel brain cells dying as a result. All apologies to the dude. All apologies to the dudes on the morning show, but yeah,
right.
I could feel myself getting dumber for having being asked that question.
Well, I know I've seen it on Twitter, again, the realm of the lowest common denominator, but let's just be honest. This is all about Russ. Jared is a nice backup, and he showed his toughness. Like, I'm not taking anything away from the dude's toughness, but I've seen too many practices. I had someone on Instagram, like, try to talk smack about me. I'm like, because I said, you got nothing in Jarrett Stidham other than a backup. Like, there's no future here. So let him be a nice backup. No one should, bag on the kid. Just know exactly what he is and not expect anything more.
Right. If we'd seen it in the previous practices, like with Alberto Okwuegbunam, I think the conversation could have been different, right? But he wasn't stacking days like Alberto did. I looked at that game. It was nice. And again, you like the toughness that he showed when he got the win knocked out of him, getting back in, only missing one play, as it turned out. You like that? You like the deep ball accuracy? I mean, there were things that you can be in, things by which you can be encouraged from that game. No doubt about it. But let's keep things reasonable here. I mean, preseason history is littered with an awful lot of Kyle Sloters and Babe Laufenbergs, okay? Especially that preseason finale. Laufenberg's an old school name. If you followed Washington back in the 1980s, if you followed the Cowboys, because he was there as well, I believe he was also in San Diego. If you know the Babe and his August exploits, you know. If you know Kyle Sloter and his August exploits, and you know them around here, Minnesota Vikings fans know them, hey, that's well and good. It doesn't mean you're going to be delivering on Sundays, that you have that ability when you get into the regular season. Everybody's got to put that stallion back in the barn, let Sean Payton keep working with Jarrett Stidham, and hopefully, knock on the wood here on the armrests of this Craftsman chair, hopefully Russell Wilson will stay upright and can get back to his Seattle form, because it's still all about Russ. It's not about Jarrett Stidham this year.
Yeah, that's what it should be about there as well. Mace, any surprise cuts so far? The Kendall Hinton thing, probably the one fans.
Yeah, and I'd say a mild surprise. I mean, I actually think that may have some impact on the decision to keep Alberto and maybe Nate Adkins as well, because now I think you've got a window where you keep 5 tight ends. Because if you're looking at the wide receivers, you go through them. You got obviously Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Marvin Mims Jr., Brandon Johnson. By the way, Mims and Johnson were the 2 starters on Saturday, so it's pretty clear they're the next dudes up. And for Brandon Johnson, if he hadn't been injured, I'm not sure he even would have played in that game. But having missed those last couple of weeks, I think they want to get him back up to speed, because without Jerry Jeudy, if he doesn't go in week 1, you're going to see an awful lot of Brandon Johnson because he can block. And that I think is what's probably going to end up with him, resulting in him getting more snaps in week 1 than Marvin Mims Jr. will. And then the 5th wide receiver right now, I'd say, based on what we've seen over the last couple of weeks and even Saturday adding to that, another dude who's stacking good days was Lil Jordan Humphrey. Mm-hmm. And then I think, honestly, like beyond that, if they didn't keep Kendall Hinton, I don't see any of those guys unless they decide to sneak Marquez Callaway on, but he has not had a good summer, and he didn't have a good game on Saturday either. So if you go light at wide receiver with 5 dudes, you can go heavy at tight end with 5 guys as well. You can go 5 guys at each. You can go, just think of the burgers, right? Go 5 guys at tight end. You go 5 guys at wide receiver. And part of the plan for filling in for Jerry Jeudy in the short term may well be a little more playing time for Greg Dulcich and Alberto.
Why can't Alberto do what Dalton Kincaid's going to do for the Bills? Or maybe more accurately, what Michael Thomas did for Sean Payton. I'm not saying he's Michael Thomas. He's not Marcus Colston, but a big-bodied receiver.
Yeah.
I'd be fine with that.
You know, the thing that Alberto has going for him, not only is it the 4.5 speed, but he's very gifted at finding gaps in the zone. Like that's the thing that jumps out, and you could see it. You've seen it from time to time when he's been in there over the years. He knows how to find those open spaces. Like there's a natural ability that he possesses. And I think, you know what? Lean into it. Lean into that. Play to his strengths. But what we've learned the last couple of weeks is that now that Alberto appears to be turning a corner as a blocker, I'm not saying he's particularly effective, but is he willing, and can he put his body in there? Yeah. I mean, shoot. Jaleel McLaughlin lit up when I asked him about Alberto, lit up when he was talking about him as a blocker and the progress they'd made. I mean, it's there. It's all there. And you're watching Alberto, you feel like, man, after what he's been through, after being in that negative headspace for a good while last year, it's like, man, it's so close for him. It's so close. And if you can wring that little extra out of him, man, you might be getting something that you did not expect to get when this training camp started. I'm excited about the possibilities that they keep Alberto on the 53. I think Sean Payton and the way Sean Payton kind of talked about it wasn't a long answer on Saturday, but you could kind of tell in his voice and his eyes that Albert's really given him something to think about, that Albert's got his brain churning a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it means something to him, Mace.
Yeah.
You can tell it means something to him. So many guys that we know would check out. Oh, it's not I lost Drew Lock. It's a new coach. And here we go. And I'm buried. The first depth chart comes out. I'm the last guy. Like, so many players would have made excuses. Alberto went and made plays.
I love that. That's a great way of putting it. So many make excuses. Alberto made plays.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You make a quarter every time you say it.
Oh gosh! Well, I guess
Callaway needed the game that Lil Jordan had, and Wes brings up a great point. Part of Stidham's performance was giving those guys chances to make plays.
Yeah, and then I mean, Callaway had that chance from Danucci. I mean, that, you know what? That was a catchable ball. That was a touchdown that Callaway could have had.
Yep,
and he didn't get it. Yeah, you do wonder if that moment might have been the moment it slipped away for him. The other thing on Callaway is, with the way he's trending, I think it's pretty possible that you can get him to the practice squad as well. And Sean Payton knows what kind of receiver he can be. Saw it back in the 2021 season. Maybe you just give him a little more time to marinate down there, get his feet back under him, and maybe rebuild his confidence a little bit, because he does have some skills and he does have some value. I mean, I think right now, when you're looking at the practice squad, if you go 5 receivers on the 53, maybe you're keeping 2 or even 3 receivers on the practice squad, right? Because you'd be talking about Callaway plus Montrell Washington plus a Taylor Grimes or one of the other young dudes on the back end of the roster. Maybe that's something to think about.
Yeah, you're definitely considering it. Now, roster construction will, I guess, not include K'Waun Williams. What do we know? What's the latest about the Broncos slot corner having surgery? And good thing is saying Bassey's coming through, making big fun plays.
You can read more about Bassey in my piece at denversports.com. I talked to him after the game on Saturday. I'll say this for K'Waun Williams, that today the surgery was happening and part of the surgery was determining the extent of the damage. If they find out this is going to be a 4 to 6 month rehab, I think he may go straight to IR, and that's going to end his season. That's going to be tough. If we're looking at more of a 2-month rehab, he's on the 53, and I think he passes through to injured reserve the next day. Is that good, Cecil? The water over the ice. Is that good?
Yes. Sorry for making noise.
No, that's okay. I mean, sometimes we're all slurping stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
But I heard that. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. Slancha. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
For a new generation.
Hey, speaking of clear beverages, why, I wish they would make
Crystal Pepsi, man.
Yeah, they didn't make it permanent instead of just bringing it back every decade or so.
Yeah.
Crystal Pepsi, or the SNL parody, Crystal Gravy. You ever see that? They did like,
oh man.
Finally you can see your meat. I knew where I was going. I knew where I was going there. That was not unintentional, like some of the things I've dropped in.
Yes. A Mace classic, shall we say, on this program. Yeah, we're waiting to see on a few things, but the chat room's going back and forth about surprise cuts. I'm not really sure we're gonna see any.
I mean, we have talked about Garrett Bowles.
I asked you straight up the other day on Schlereth and Evans, and you said no.
I don't think I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's interesting. It's an interesting notion. But I think when it comes down to it, there is going to be a hesitancy about saying, okay, our backup tackles behind Mike McGlinchey and Cam Fleming are Alex Palczewski and Quinn Bailey. And by the way, Palczewski, that was a rough night for him on Saturday night as well. I think he's still making this team. He stacked good days. Saturday wasn't a good day for him.
Yeah, not a good day for him whatsoever. So as we look forward to a Jonathan Taylor decision, Josina Anderson, our friend, says 2 teams working hard. Okay. It's the Dolphins, and then we'll see. The Bears are out of it. The Eagles are lurking. Yes, the Broncos have a varying level of interest, depending on who you listen to. So Tuesday coming up, we'll see if they can get a superstar here. But the way the backs ran,
I wouldn't count on it. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say JT's a Dolphin. He's a Dolphin. He's a Dolphin or a Colt when all is said or done, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I'm not sure that's the wisest course of action for the Broncos, even though. I'll tell you what, if you brought in Jonathan Taylor, the Broncos would become every Wisconsin Badger fan's second favorite team, right? You'd have a Badger at QB and you'd have a Badger at tailback.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd have a Badger on the defensive line. By the way, Matt Henningsen had another good game. I've got to think he's Sharpie on the 53 on the defensive line as well.
Right. Now, I really positions where there's some question marks are how many wide receivers, and then in the safety position, like,
yeah.
Okay, is Kareem Jackson? If Kareem Jackson doesn't make the team, and I think he will, Mace, I wouldn't say it's a surprise cut. There's really, other than Bowles, which isn't going to happen, not a lot of surprise cuts.
Yeah, I think not. The interesting thing at safety is, how many guys do you go with? Where does PJ Locke fit in? Because he's been injured the last couple of weeks. We know about his value on special teams. De'Laren Turner-Yell is all over special teams right now. Do they move on from Kareem Jackson, or with K-Jack, do they think, all right, maybe we cut him and bring him back a day later because he's not subject to the waiver process where other teams can claim him. He's a vested veteran, so you simply release him and the Broncos can bring him back a day later. They did that with Mike Purcell last year. Is that something they think about with Kareem Jackson? If you're going to get K'Waun Williams back at some point, think about that with Kareem Jackson. Bring him back the next day, and then K'Waun goes on injured reserve. The other thing, if you want to really do the heartless thing, is to cut Kareem Jackson and see if he's brought back to the roster in a couple of weeks when you're not on the hook for the salary for the year. Because the whole thing with vested veterans is if they're on your roster week 1, you're on the hook for their salary the whole year, even if you cut them. So, like for example, last year the Broncos cut Melvin Gordon, but they were on the hook for his entire paycheck because he's a vested veteran. So that's some of the things that you think about. And that's where, George Payton and Sean Payton have conversations, because George Payton is thinking about things like that. He's got the cap just under his auspices, but Sean Payton's thinking about the 53, and that's it, and no considerations beyond that. So there are going to be some interesting conversations, I think, tonight over at Centura Health Training Center as they try to figure out the back end here, because some things aren't incredibly clear cut. I mean, can you sneak JL Skinner to the practice squad? I don't know. A lot of teams had Skinner highly rated before he had the pec injury, getting ready for the draft. So we'll see.
Yeah, now's not the time to get cute. And maybe instead of Centura Health Training Center, they could go to Five Guys or Los Dos Portrillos. Our guy Scotty Payne, what's up?
Get some tamales, man.
He says, is Michael Burton off the roster? No.
No.
But remember when we were standing next to each other at training camp and I said, Nate Atkins can make this team, and you and I agreed. Mm-hmm. It's like when the word bubble, when I said it, I couldn't believe I said it, but that's what our eyes were telling us. Our eyes, Mace. Because we saw it both. Atkins is making the team, and Burton can. Burton's a lock. Burton's Sharpie.
You know me. I love my analytics, but the eye test does matter too, right? Mm-hmm. You and I have been to enough Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl practices over the years to where we say, okay, this dude looks like a player, this dude doesn't, right? Mm-hmm. And we see it out there on the practice field as well. Nate Atkins looks like a guy who belongs in this league. And frankly, for long-term planning purposes, with all respect to Michael Burton, maybe you're talking about Burton kind of having a one-year hitch as your fullback and Nate Atkins becoming that guy next year. Passing the baton. That's kind of how I see this thing going long-term. But Atkins isn't quite there yet. Mike Burton, hey, he's got deft touch as a target in the passing game, good blocker, and also a core special teamer as well. I mean, I think Mike Westhoff would get on the table and pound it to make sure Michael Burton's on this team.
That's old school. That's old school. Get on the table.
I think Burton's one of his guys. Mike Westhoff likes to talk about like which guys are my guys. He says everywhere he's gone, he's had some guys that they my guys, right? And I actually asked Westhoff back in June, have you figured out who your guys are? Yeah, he's like, I'm almost there. He said he felt like he could put together the special teams unit then, if asked to.
Mm-hmm. And that was June. The great thing about those old coaches is because they see it so fast, they know who's my guy, who can make it, who can't make it.
Yeah. Westhoff's a good dude. I'd say as a coach, he's one of my guys.
You're one of his guys.
He
lights up when he talks to you. That's good.
I love the wise old coaches from whom I can learn so much.
Right.
And Westy's got some life lessons too that he can pass on. He's dealt with some stuff in his time. So always love chatting with him.
One of our guys in the chat room is Jose. He says, does Sanders make Josie Jewell expendable? No.
Not this year.
Not this year. I wrote about Sanders in Mile High Monday. You can check it out. There's Parsons to his game. He's not Micah Parsons, everybody, because we haven't seen him rush the passer in that pick. Just hang on to the ball, baby. Just hang on to the rock. Squeeze it. 3 points of pressure. Come on, hang on to that rock. But you saw it. And one thing I answered on Twitter, Mace, is I have to see him turn before we can talk about him covering tight ends. I haven't seen him turn in coverage. If it's in front of him, he'll make plays.
Yeah. And there's going to come a point in the season where those tests from the tight end come fast and furious. You're obviously getting a break because Darren Waller is now a New York Giant instead of a Las Vegas Raider in week 1. But you get down into the season, those tight ends that offer challenges, they're going to be coming. You say turn. I think of it like was said in Top Gun, turn and burn, because you got to turn and you got to burn to keep up. I know he's got the burn in him, but can he burn after the turn? The whole change of direction thing. That's
swivel.
Right. That's what things like the 40-yard dash don't teach you. Right. And that's not the 3-cone. It has a little bit more, but you're also turning and going in a different direction, man. So we'll see. We're like Eric Kubiak said, I quoted him over the weekend. We're fixing to find out.
You quote Top Gun. I was going to quote, was it Simon and Garfunkel? To every season, turn.
No, that's the Birds. The Birds.
The Birds. Okay.
No, Simon and Garfunkel is
like Sound of Silence.
Sound of Silence, Bridge Over Troubled Water, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Okay. Well, I quoted the Birds. I didn't even know.
And then you get to Paul Simon's solo career, and that's where you're getting into Kodachrome, for example. Still crazy after all these years, and then we get on later into stuff like You Can Call Me Al and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll be happy to sit here and drop some Simon and Garfunkel, Paul Simon lyrics, man. I can play that game.
Right. Just because he asks, and I'll answer it briefly. KT says, "How much of the Jonathan Taylor talk is agent driven?" From me, 0. Because I don't talk to agents, and if I do, I don't run with what they tell me. Because Mace, as you well know, agents will tell you the sky's pink.
Yes.
If it helps their client. I don't talk to agents when I break any sort of news. This is from team people around the league. So for me, and that's not for everybody. I know there's plenty of people in this industry that just listen to agents and run with agents. It's an information exchange.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Oh, well. Let me see. What else? Glockmaster asks about Mims. Mims had a really good game. Want to see more from him. He'll begin, trying to move up the depth chart, move up the target pecking order, shall we say. But he reminds me of Emmanuel Sanders on that tough catch that was too low. It looked like he...
And I think the other thing with him, I mentioned it earlier, why I think Brandon Johnson's going to play more early. Blocking ability matters, and Brandon Johnson's just ahead of him at this point. So that's one reason why I think we'll see a little less of Mims early, but we'll see him out there on special teams, and we're going to see him out there as a vertical stretch threat. But I would anticipate when the Broncos are in their base package, which is 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers, most of that in week 1 is going to be Courtland Sutton and Brandon Johnson.
All right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mace, anything else pressing before we tie a bow on today's program?
This is always my least favorite 24 hours of the year, man. A lot of dreams die around the NFL. This is hard, and look, a lot of these guys, they know what call is coming, because they know this situation. I mean, let's face it, that's why the Albert O conversation is interesting. But most of those dudes were playing late in the fourth quarter. The best they can hope for out of this over the next 48 hours is to land on the practice squad. So they've dealt with it, but they're a guy. I mean, you've got hopes and dreams on the line. There are life-changing moments that are going to happen for a great many people in this sport. And I would say, if you're gonna say something to them, like don't be stupid on social media. Just if you tweet at them, tweet with compassion.
Yeah, it's that time of year, and certainly watching other teams' cuts. Mace, I haven't seen anybody that I'm super excited about yet. Like Rashad Perriman got cut, James Washington. I'm thinking wide receivers, but if someone comes up like that, then we'll talk about it. Until then, make your roster.
Yeah, make the roster, and then we'll see. We'll be able to go through these names tomorrow, I think, and start parsing out. But that's the other thing. If you're on the 53, it doesn't mean you're safe, especially when you're on a team that has the number 5 waiver claim and is trying to remake the back end of its roster. So this is going to be an interesting 48 hours.
He is Andrew Mason, always interesting on social networking at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying thanks so much for watching and growing this YouTube channel and the show, the big show. You guys love it. I don't love the audio issues sometimes, but I love it. Anyway, we appreciate you all for working with us here. Until next time, be safe, be kind, know that you're appreciated. Stay tuned, and would you please stay frosty.